Okay, so a question on addiction, slipping, and being mostly in the beingness, in the I amness, in the infinite, in the observer, but being surprised by a slip while watching a TV program, and also having, I would say, context coming back from holiday. So, which I think is also another aspect. So there's a few things. Well, there's a lot of things I can say as a and it's also there's a part I have to sort of clarify with myself being a spiritual teacher, as I do different teachings and I don't share how they all interrelate with different levels of consciousness very clearly. And I haven't up until now started talking about the temptations and the things that students need to be weary of, which I'll talk more about as a spiritual teacher going forward. So the beingness or the witness there is a very advanced level of consciousness. And it seems really like stupid to go to low levels like counseling or praying or doing 12-step meetings for addiction recovery if you're sort of in the beingness and you're just remaining in the beingness. Why would you do that? Why would you um, however, you've got to understand that the beingness, Hawkins says that each level of consciousness, and he's written a book, Transcending the Levels of Consciousness. I recommend the book by Hawkins, Transcending the Levels of Consciousness. I will recommend very heavily from now on. I'm not earning any money from this, just so that people know, but is Dr. Hawkins' website, all his videos, which you can subscribe to on a monthly basis to get basically to get the all the directions you would need to live life from the lowest to the highest level and the defenses you need. Anyway, so just because you're in the beingness and you're in the beingness quite regularly doesn't mean you've transcended all the lower levels of consciousness and all the lessons you need to learn from the lower levels of consciousness, like addiction, magical relationships, special relationships, mastery of financial fear. Just because you're in the beingness doesn't mean all the belief systems and all the lessons in those lower levels have been. Just because you're in the sublime state for a few weeks or months doesn't mean they're not still all transcended and that you can easily be pulled back and even slip into addiction with all those levels. So, so you then understand there has to be a level of vigilance. And also, if you have extreme weaknesses, whether it's with food addiction, alcohol, money, sex, whatever it is, that if those have been vulnerabilities in the past, that you keep you have an extra vigilance, an extra care not to fall for those temptations. And otherwise, you can do. Also, the other thing is, just say on a sidestep, if you go on a holiday, the word holiday is just the wrong word if you're a spiritual seeker because it means escape from the now. See, where you are now is not nice. So you're going away for an escape. That puts a setup in the ego that you're going to get relief in another area, another location. So then that will give you a high in a different, like let's say I'm in the UK and I go off to the Bahamas. Even though I might not consciously know that, I might think I'm in the beingness now and I think I'm in the beingness then. Just, if it's connotated anywhere within the ego, there'll be a high from being another, you get a temporary drug fix from being in another location. When you come back, you'll be vulnerable to temptation on the way back. So to be aware of that. And so to take extra grounding in your spiritual practice on the way back. Also, okay, so there's two things on that. So when you're in the beingness, even if you're in the beingness for a while, it doesn't mean you've transcended all the lower levels. So there is I recommend if people are from an addiction background, they just pop along to the local 12-step meetings as just a top up on a regular basis. You don't have to participate, but you'll get the energy to give you a defense against whether it's alcohol, food, sex, or whatever it is in the fellowship. So that you have the energy of defense against temptation for slipping in those areas. um, even in the beingness. You don't have to listen in the meetings or read the literature. It's just to get the energy and just to be aware, not to go into complacency. So just because one is in the observer doesn't mean that one has transcended all the lower levels. It doesn't mean you've cancelled, just because you're in the beingness for several days or the witness, it doesn't mean you've cancelled every financial fear, every sexual thought, every special relationship thought, every alcohol thought, every food thought. They can still come back because even though you're not experiencing them in the beingness, in the witness, so they're still there, latent in the unconscious, waiting to trap you back into fear or addiction. So just to be aware of that. Also, you've got to understand, um, and I'll be talking more at length about this in future weeks, is uh, as Jesus Christ and Buddha, nowadays in a lot of the spiritual literature and a lot of the spiritual teachers are just sharing the happy, fluffy stuff like surrender for bliss and just release everything and go to the fourth dimension, which is all true, and I also do that as well. But you've got to also understand that there are, and I think Buddha and Jesus Christ is not really talked about as much heavily in the spiritual circles nowadays. Gave very, very heavy recommendations on Jesus Christ and the temptations, and Lucifer and Lucifer's temptations, and also Buddha being attacked by the demons and the attachments. So there was this heavy thing, and which is not really talked about so heavily nowadays in spiritual circles and with spiritual teachers. But I think it's my responsibility to guard the students against naivety with these things, because it can all seem quite like easy and fluffy, and there's no pitfalls to look out for. So as I've just shared, if you've got vulnerabilities with addiction or fear or finances, even if you're in the sublime states, I would keep, mindful of doing what I call staying away from situations. Now Hawkins' work, and I'll be talking more about this, calibrates things. Every television program you see has a vibration. When you watch into it, you're tuning into it like a radio station, and you become influenced by negative attractor fields. If it's a negative, even watching the news or an advert. So David Hawkins calibrated them while watching adverts. Your acupuncture meridian systems are blown out 15 times. That's quite serious. Or if you're watching like a horror movie or something, you're blowing out all your acupuncture meridians and you're becoming susceptible to negative energies and negative thoughts. So just the choice of doing that is putting you at extreme risk. Meeting people, situations, parties which are below integrity, with music below integrity, is blowing out all your meridians. You become susceptible to thoughts and actions you wouldn't be when connected to higher vibrations. So you've got to be extremely vigilant and mindful. I think this is the great thing with Hawkins' work. I do recommend his book, Truth versus. I'll be very heavily recommending his books and his works to defend students against falling for easy traps in this world. There are certain teachers which don't calibrate very high, books that don't calibrate high, music that doesn't calibrate high. How do you spot a fallen spiritual teacher? The signs to look out for. And I'll be sharing more about that on an ongoing basis. So students need to be very, very vigilant to keep themselves at the highest vibration with the highest vibration surroundings, people, places, and situations and teachers to keep them safe. Otherwise, things can pull you out into fear or addiction quite easily, even if even if you think you're in advanced states. And I'll talk more about those in future videos, Luciferic temptations, the demons and the attachments, and the Visanas, and also Hawkins' work of making sure you don't, align yourself with books, teachers, films, groups that are calibrating at a low vibration because your consciousness tunes to a low vibration. You become susceptible to negative thoughts and negative actions and negative feelings. So you need to be really mindful to protect your vibration. Um, okay, so being surprised by addiction, yeah. Well, I sort of shared it. I think I said so. There has to be greater vigilance, especially coming back from a holiday. And just because you're in the beingness and in the witness serve for months doesn't mean you've transcended the lower levels and doesn't mean you've transcended the levels higher. And I'll talk a bit about that today. To remember, like Muhammad was at 700 when he had temporal, Hawkins through research, temporal lobe epileptic fit, and probably had a demonic attack at the same time, and was taken down. One of the, unfortunately, and that caused disastrous consequences. So even at very advanced levels, you could have a shocking circumstance occur which could allow negative entities to influence you. So always just be mindful to keep yourself as spiritually tuned. And I will talk more about the vigilance of not allowing yourself to interact with negative energies. Okay, so I'll stop there.